Chosen one. If you've ever wondered why everyone else seems to be meeting their person while your path stays strangely quiet, this message was not sent to you by accident. What you are experiencing is not rejection, delay, or divine neglect. It is something far more intentional and far more sacred than you've been told. Chosen one. The reason you haven't met them yet is not because God forgot your name. It is because heaven is protecting a timeline you cannot yet see. There are relationships that feel intense, magnetic, even unforgettable, but not every strong connection is meant to stay. Some are assigned only to awaken you, refine you, and reveal what you are not called to carry forward. Anointed one. Many believe the right person arrives when desire is strongest. But in the kingdom, alignment comes before encounter. Scripture reminds us in the book of Ecclesiastes that there is a time and a season for every purpose under heaven. And right now you are standing in a Kairos window where preparation matters more than proximity. Chosen one. What feels like absence is actually separation. What feels like waiting is actually positioning. God does not reveal a destiny connection until your discernment can hold it. The scroll concerning your love story has not been delayed, it has been sealed for the right moment. Stay with me. What you are about to hear will reframe everything you thought you knew about timing, connection, and why your story has unfolded the way it has. Chosen one. There is a reason this message keeps finding you when your heart is quiet and your questions are loud. This is not a coincidence. This is not an algorithm. This is not random timing. This is a Kairos interruption. Heaven is stepping into your awareness because the narrative you've been repeating to yourself about why you haven't met them yet is incomplete, and in some ways it has been misleading your spirit. For a long time, you may have believed that the delay meant something was wrong with you. Maybe you told yourself you were too much, too slow, too broken, or too late. Maybe you watched others pair off, settle down, build lives, and you wondered why your story seemed paused while everyone else's kept moving. But chosen one, hear this clearly, your story was never paused. It was being written in a hidden ink that only reveals itself at the appointed time. There are seasons when God does his deepest work, where no one else can see it. I know this because I've lived it. There were years in my own life where nothing on the outside matched the promises I felt on the inside. I was doing the work, I was healing, I was growing, but relationally it felt like silence. And in that silence I learned something that changed everything. God often withholds visibility to protect formation. What you are becoming matters more than who you are about to meet. Anointed one. Not every intense connection is a confirmation. Some people are sent to activate wounds, not destinies. Some relationships feel magnetic because they touch unhealed places, not because they are aligned with your future. If you've ever met someone who felt unforgettable, consuming, even destabilizing, and then disappeared, that was not a mistake. That was a mirror. And mirrors are not meant to be held onto. They are meant to be looked into, learned from, and then released. There is a difference between a karmic encounter and a covenant connection. A karmic encounter pulls you into cycles. A covenant connection pulls you into clarity. And chosen one, heaven does not reveal covenant until cycles have lost their grip on you. This is where many people get confused. They assume chemistry means confirmation. They assume intensity means destiny. But God is far more interested in alignment than adrenaline. Scripture tells us in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, that the vision awaits an appointed time and will not delay. That verse is not about slowness, it is about precision. Your love story is not late, it is precise. It is timed to the version of you that can steward it without losing yourself. I want to speak honestly with you for a moment. There was a time in my life when I thought I was ready, but looking back, I would have sabotaged what I prayed for. I still needed validation. I still confused attention with affection. I still tolerated inconsistency because it felt familiar. And had the right person arrived then, I would have shrunk myself to keep them instead of standing fully in who I was called to be. God knew that, and He knows that about you too. Chosen one. The delay is not about punishment, it is about protection. Heaven has been filtering your discernment, teaching you how to recognize peace instead of chaos, teaching you how to feel safe without performance, teaching you how to be whole without being chosen by another human being. Because the truth is, if you don't learn to rest in wholeness alone, you will chase completion in people who were never assigned to give it. There is a hidden scroll associated with your relational destiny. It is not just about romance, it is about assignment. The person meant to walk with you will not distract you from your purpose, they will amplify it. They will not compete with your calling, they will recognize it. And until your spirit can tell the difference between love and attachment, heaven will keep certain doors sealed. You may not realize this, but some of the loneliness you felt was actually separation. God was pulling you out of environments, patterns, and emotional habits that would have contaminated what is coming. I've seen this over and over again. People who meet the right person too early often spend years undoing damage that could have been avoided. God is not careless with what He joins together. Anointed one, this season you are in is not empty. It is encoded. Every tear you cried in private, every prayer you whispered when you were tired of waiting, every time you chose growth over familiarity, it was recorded. Heaven does not waste obedience. And now something is shifting. The questions that once hurt are starting to lose their emotional charge. The memories that once pulled you backward no longer define you. That is not time passing, that is alignment completing. This is a Kairos moment, because you are no longer asking, when will they come? You are starting to ask, who am I becoming? That is the question heaven waits for. Because when identity stabilizes, connection can be trusted. Chosen one, you were never meant to chase love. Love is assigned to meet you when your spirit is anchored, your discernment is sharp, and your heart is no longer negotiating its worth. The silence you endured trained you to hear God more clearly than noise ever could. And the next connection will not arrive with confusion. It will arrive with clarity, steadiness, and recognition that feels calm, not chaotic. Stay here with me. In the next movement of this message, I'm going to show you how to recognize the difference between a relationship that awakens you through pain and one that walks with you in peace, and why heaven is now preparing the environment, not just the person. Chosen one. There is something deeper happening beneath the surface of your waiting that most people never stop long enough to understand. What looks like delay from the outside is actually precision from heaven. And the reason this matters so much is because the next connection in your life is not meant to fix you, it is meant to walk with the version of you that has already been refined. One of the greatest misconceptions about love is that it arrives to rescue us from emptiness. That belief alone has caused countless people to bind themselves to relationships that were never meant to last. Anointed one, true divine connection does not arrive to fill a void. It arrives to multiply what is already whole. And until wholeness is established, heaven will often withhold proximity no matter how strong the desire feels. I want to speak to you not just as a messenger, but as someone who has lived through the tension of waiting while watching others move ahead. There were moments when I questioned whether I had misunderstood God. Moments when the silence felt personal. Moments when I wondered if maybe I had missed my window. But what I didn't understand then, and what I see clearly now, is that God was not withholding love. He was teaching me how to recognize it. Chosen one. There is a kind of relationship that feels loud. It comes with emotional highs, sudden intimacy, fast attachment, and deep confusion. It feels significant because it shakes you. But shaking is not the same as building. Some connections enter your life not to stay, but to expose patterns you didn't know were still active. They awaken insecurity, fear of abandonment, the need to be chosen, the urge to overgive. And when they leave, it hurts, not because they were your future, but because they touched unfinished places. This is where many people get stuck. They assume the pain means the connection was the one. But pain is not proof of destiny. Often it is proof of misalignment. God allows certain people to come close enough to reveal what still needs healing, but not close enough to become permanent. Anointed one. Heaven is not cruel. It is kind in a way that does not always feel gentle. There are seasons when God answers your prayers by saying no to the wrong thing, even when your emotions are saying yes. And the reason you haven't met them yet is because your discernment has been undergoing training. You are learning to tell the difference between familiarity and peace. Peace is quiet. Peace does not rush. Peace does not make you anxious about losing it. Peace does not require you to explain yourself or shrink your truth to keep someone comfortable. Peace recognizes you without demanding proof. That kind of connection cannot be rushed, and it cannot survive in a heart that still believes love must be earned. There was a time in my own life when I would have mistaken peace for boredom. I was so used to emotional intensity that calm felt unfamiliar. I equated love with longing, absence, and effort. And because of that, I overlooked what was stable and chased what was unavailable. God had to slow me down, not by force, but by silence, until my nervous system could learn rest. Chosen one. This is why your season has been quiet. Not empty, but quiet. God has been rewiring your internal compass, teaching you how to sit with yourself, teaching you how to be present without distraction, teaching you how to feel safe without validation. These lessons cannot be learned in the presence of someone who triggers old survival patterns. There is a reason the scroll concerning your relationship destiny has remained sealed. It is not because heaven is unsure. It is because timing is not just about when you meet someone, it is about who you are when you meet them. Destiny connections require capacity. Capacity for honesty. Capacity for boundaries. Capacity for intimacy that does not collapse into attachment. Anointed one. I need you to hear this clearly. The person assigned to walk with you will not feel like a battle. They will not feel like something you have to prove yourself worthy of. They will not arrive in chaos. They will arrive in alignment. And alignment often feels subtle at first because it does not trigger fear. You may have noticed that the more you healed, the fewer people could access you emotionally. Conversations that once felt exciting now feel draining. Patterns you once tolerated now feel heavy. That is not loneliness, that is discernment sharpening. God is narrowing your emotional field so that when the right connection appears, you can recognize it without confusion. There is also something else happening that many people overlook. Heaven is not only preparing you, it is preparing the environment. Timing is not just about two people being ready. It is about circumstances aligning so that the relationship can grow without constant resistance. Some unions are delayed because the surrounding conditions are not yet stable. God does not plant seeds in frozen ground. I have seen people meet the right person at the wrong time and lose them, not because the connection wasn't real, but because the season was hostile. God is merciful enough to delay an encounter rather than let it be destroyed by immaturity, distraction, or pressure. What feels like absence is often preservation. Chosen one. You are not being hidden because you are unworthy. You are being hidden because what is coming requires privacy before revelation. There are connections that must form outside the noise, away from opinions, expectations, and interference. Some things grow best in secret. This is why surrender matters so deeply in this season. Not passive waiting, but active trust. Trust that God sees what you cannot. Trust that every closed door protected you from a version of yourself that would have settled. Trust that your story is unfolding with intention, not neglect. You are not behind, you are aligned. And here is the shift that marks a true Kairos moment, when you stop asking God to hurry and start asking Him to prepare you fully. When your prayers move from, "When will it happen to make me ready for what you have written?" that posture changes everything. Chosen one. The silence you endured has tuned your spirit. The lessons you learned have strengthened your discernment. The solitude you walked through has anchored your identity. You are not the same person you were when you first began waiting. And that transformation is the evidence that heaven has been working all along. Stay with me. In the next movement, I'm going to speak about the specific internal signs that reveal when preparation is complete and how to recognize when the sealed scroll is about to open, not through excitement, but through peace that feels unfamiliar at first. Chosen one. There comes a moment in every hidden season when something inside you quietly shifts, and most people miss it because they are looking for fireworks. They are waiting for excitement, emotional rush, or a sudden sign in the external world. But heaven rarely announces completion with noise. When preparation is complete, the signal is peace, not the kind you have to convince yourself of, but the kind that settles into your body without effort. This is how you begin to recognize that the sealed scroll is loosening. There was a time when the thought of being alone felt heavy. Silence amplified your questions. Nights felt longer than they should have. But now something is different. The same quiet no longer feels threatening. You can sit with yourself without urgency. You no longer feel the need to fill space with distraction, conversation, or validation. That is not numbness. That is stability. And stability is one of the clearest signs that heaven has finished an internal work. Anointed one. When preparation is complete, desperation disappears. You stop scanning rooms. You stop forcing connections. You stop wondering whether someone sees you. Not because you no longer desire companionship, but because your worth is no longer tied to being chosen. This is critical. Destiny connections require two people who can choose each other freely, not two people trying to escape loneliness. I want to be honest with you here because this is where discernment becomes subtle. Many people mistake emotional calm for indifference and assume something is wrong. They think, why don't I feel that hunger anymore? But what they don't realize is that hunger was never love. It was survival. Love does not demand urgency. Love recognizes timing. There was a season in my own life where I realized I no longer feared missing out. I could watch others move forward without feeling left behind. That was unfamiliar to me. For years, comparison had been my quiet torment, but suddenly it lost its grip. That was not because I stopped wanting partnership. It was because my identity had rooted itself somewhere deeper. That was the moment I understood that God was closing one chapter and preparing to open another. Chosen one. When preparation is complete, your attraction patterns change. You no longer feel pulled toward inconsistency. Emotional unavailability no longer excites you. Mixed signals feel exhausting instead of intriguing. This is not maturity in theory, it is maturity in practice. Your nervous system is no longer addicted to chaos. and that alone disqualifies many past patterns from returning. This is why some people suddenly disappear from your life without conflict. Conversations fade, connections lose momentum. It is not rejection, it is resonance shifting. God is realigning your emotional frequency so that only what matches your healed state can reach you. This is one of the quiet mercies of heaven. Another sign the scroll is about to open is clarity without obsession. You begin to understand what you need without fixating on who will provide it. You can articulate your boundaries calmly. You can name your desires without apology. You are no longer bargaining with God saying, "I'll accept less if you just send someone." Instead, your spirit says, "I trust you to send what aligns." Anointed One. This posture changes everything. It tells heaven that you are ready to steward what you have been praying for. God does not release covenant into confusion. He releases it into clarity. There is also a subtle grief that sometimes surfaces at this stage, not for what you lack, but for what you tolerated. You may find yourself mourning past versions of yourself, not with shame, but with compassion. You see how much you tried, how deeply you hoped, how long you waited in situations that could never hold you. That grief is not meant to pull you backward. It is meant to close emotional loops. Closure does not always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from understanding, and understanding is one of the final keys that unlocks forward movement. Chosen. One another sign preparation is complete is that your prayers change tone. They become quieter, more surrendered, less detailed. You stop micromanaging outcomes. You stop asking God to explain himself. You trust him enough to rest in the unknown. This is not passivity. It is faith that has matured. Scripture often speaks about God leading his people into rest before revealing promise. Rest is not inactivity. It is alignment. When your inner world is no longer frantic, your outer world can finally synchronize with heaven's timing. You may also notice that opportunities unrelated to romance begin to open. Purpose clarifies, direction sharpens, creativity returns. This is not a distraction from love, it is preparation for partnership. The person assigned to walk with you is meant to meet you in motion, not in waiting. God often stabilizes purpose before introducing union because shared direction matters more than shared attraction. I have seen this again and again. When people meet their destiny partner, it often happens while they are focused elsewhere, building, serving, growing, obeying. Not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped striving. Striving clouds discernment. Alignment sharpens it. Anointed One. When the scroll begins to open, the connection will not feel dramatic. It will feel familiar in a way that does not trigger fear. There will be recognition without anxiety, interest without obsession, curiosity without loss of control. And if that sounds underwhelming to your old self, that is how you know you have changed. Destiny does not need to shout to be real. You will also notice that your intuition becomes calm instead of reactive. You are no longer trying to read between every line. You are not analyzing every message. You are present. You respond instead of anticipate. That grounded awareness is one of the greatest protections against deception. Chosen One. Heaven is not preparing you for a relationship that consumes you. It is preparing you for a relationship that supports you. That kind of union requires emotional sobriety, the ability to feel deeply without losing clarity. That is what this season has been cultivating. If you are honest, you can feel it. Something has settled. Something has resolved. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are no longer negotiating your standards. You are no longer afraid that waiting means missing out. That is not resignation. That is readiness. The final sign that preparation is complete is trust without timelines. You no longer need to know when, you just know it will align. This is the posture heaven responds to quickly because it signals that your faith is no longer conditional. Chosen one. The scroll does not open when you are desperate enough. It opens when you are steady enough. And now that steadiness is forming, heaven is adjusting the final details, not to test you, but to synchronize you. The moment will not feel rushed. It will feel natural, almost obvious in hindsight. And when it arrives, you will understand why nothing before it could have worked. Stay with me. In the next movement, I'm going to speak about what happens after the scroll opens, why the beginning of a destiny connection often feels surprisingly simple, and how to protect it from old habits that try to resurface once something good finally arrives. Chosen one. When the scroll finally opens, most people expect a rush of emotion so intense it sweeps them off their feet. They expect lightning drama, instant certainty, and overwhelming passion. But what actually arrives often feels surprisingly simple, and that simplicity can be confusing if you've spent years associating love with struggle, anticipation, or emotional turbulence. This is where many miss the moment. The beginning of a destiny connection does not announce itself with chaos. It enters quietly, almost respectfully, as if it is asking permission to stay. There is interest, but not obsession. There is attraction, but not anxiety. There is curiosity, but not urgency. And if your old self is still lingering in the background, it may whisper, "This feels too calm. Am I missing something?" Chosen one. That calm is the confirmation. I remember the first time I encountered a connection that didn't activate my fears. There was no racing heart, no fear of abandonment, no pressure to impress. And for a moment I almost dismissed it because it didn't match the intensity I had been trained to expect. But later I realized something profound. Peace does not compete for attention. It waits to be recognized, anointed. One destiny does not seduce you, it aligns with you. When the scroll opens, the relationship begins in reality, not fantasy. You see the person clearly, not through projection or longing, but through presence. You are not trying to mold them into something. You are not trying to earn their consistency. You are simply showing up as yourself, and they are doing the same. That mutual groundedness is rare, and it must be protected. This is why the early phase of a destiny connection is sacred. It is not fragile in a weak sense, but it is new in a way that requires care. Old habits will try to reappear. Old fears will test the foundation. The enemy of alignment is not obvious destruction, it is subtle regression. Chosen one. One of the greatest temptations after the scroll opens is to rush intimacy. Not physical intimacy, but emotional merging. Oversharing too soon. Overcommitting too fast. Handing over trust before it has been built through consistency. This does not come from love. It comes from relief. Relief that waiting is over. Relief that someone finally sees you. But anointed one destiny does not need to be rushed. What God joins together does not require acceleration to prove its validity. If something is meant to grow, it will grow at a pace that protects both hearts. There is a wisdom in letting things unfold layer by layer, in allowing trust to accumulate through repeated safety, not emotional intensity, in watching how someone responds to boundaries, silence, difference, and time. Destiny connections are revealed through patterns, not moments. Another challenge that appears at this stage is comparison. The mind may reach backward, measuring this new connection against past ones. Why doesn't this feel the same? Why am I not consumed the way I was before? Chosen one, remember this. The absence of chaos is not the absence of depth. It is the absence of dysfunction. Love that is aligned feels sustainable. It does not exhaust you. It does not require constant reassurance. It does not live in extremes. It has room to breathe. Anointed One, protecting what God is building means resisting the urge to narrate it too soon. Not everyone needs access to what is forming. Some people will project their fears, cynicism, or unresolved wounds onto something that is still tender. Privacy is not secrecy, it is stewardship. I learned this the hard way. There were times when I exposed something beautiful too early, inviting opinions before the roots had time to go deep. And what could have grown quietly was disrupted by noise. God is teaching you discernment, not just in who you love, but in who you listen to. When the scroll opens, you may notice that your instincts are calmer but clearer. You are less reactive but more aware. If something feels off, you notice it without panic. If something feels good, you enjoy it without clinging. This balanced awareness is not accidental. It is the fruit of your hidden season. Chosen One, do not abandon what you learned while waiting. The boundaries that protected you in solitude will protect the relationship too. The communication skills you developed will matter now. The self-respect you fought for will be tested not by the other person, but by your own habits. There is also something important to understand about divine timing. Just because the scroll has opened does not mean every page is revealed at once. Revelation comes progressively. Trust builds over time. Safety deepens through experience. This is not delay, this is design. Anointed One. A destiny connection grows stronger through consistency, not constant intensity. Through reliability, not grand gestures. Through honesty, not perfection. And if you are honest, you may find that this kind of love feels unfamiliar at first. That does not mean it is wrong. It means it is new. There will be moments when your old self tries to test the connection. You may feel the urge to pull away to see if they chase, or to overgive to secure the bond. These impulses are not failures. They are signals that healing is still integrating. When they arise, do not judge yourself. Simply choose differently. This is where surrender becomes daily, not dramatic. Choosing presence over protection. Choosing truth over performance. Choosing patience over control. Chosen One. The enemy does not need to destroy what God is building if he can simply distract you from nurturing it. Distraction can look like overthinking. It can look like fear of loss. It can look like trying to define the future before the present has stabilized. Stay here. Stay grounded. Let things be what they are becoming. One of the most beautiful signs that a destiny connection is real is that it does not pull you away from God. It draws you closer to your true self. You feel more like you, not less. Your life expands, not contracts. Your purpose sharpens, not blurs. Anointed One, love that is aligned will not compete with your calling. It will respect it, support it, sometimes challenge it, but never diminish it. If you ever feel yourself shrinking to keep peace, pause. That is not alignment. That is fear trying to reassert control. There is also grace in the beginning. Grace for mistakes. Grace for miscommunication. Grace for learning each other. Perfection is not the goal. Presence is. And presence requires humility, the willingness to say I'm learning instead of pretending you already know. Chosen One. The scroll opening is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of stewardship. What God reveals, He expects to be honored. What He gives, He expects to be tended. And here is the quiet truth that brings it all together. The relationship itself is not the reward. The transformation that allowed it is. The love you receive is not greater than the love you became capable of giving without losing yourself. You are no longer the person who would have begged for this. You are the person who can walk into it with open hands. In the next movement, I will speak about how to discern whether what is unfolding is truly covenant or simply comfortable, and the spiritual markers that reveal when a connection is meant to last beyond a season, not just feel good within one. Chosen one. There comes a point where comfort and covenant can look deceptively similar, and this is where discernment must rise higher than emotion. Not every connection that feels safe is assigned to stay. Not every relationship that brings relief is built to last. Comfort can be a resting place, but covenant is a dwelling. And heaven cares deeply that you know the difference. Many people stop at comfort because it feels like healing after pain. After chaos, stability feels like a miracle. After loneliness, attention feels like provision. But Anointed One covenant is not defined by how good something feels in the moment. It is defined by how it holds weight over time. Covenant connections are revealed under pressure, not pleasure. This is why God does not reveal everything at once. He allows time to test alignment, not to trap you, but to protect you. Comfort agrees with your preferences. Covenant agrees with your purpose, and purpose will always require growth. I want to speak honestly here because this is where many chosen ones stumble. When something finally feels easy, there is a temptation to settle emotionally before discernment has finished speaking. We say things like, "At least I feel calm," or "At least they're consistent," or "At least I'm not anxious anymore." Those are good signs, but they are not the full measure. Covenant does more than soothe you. It stretches you without breaking you. Chosen one. A covenant connection will challenge your ego, not your worth. It will call you higher, not make you smaller. It will invite honesty, not avoidance. There will be moments of discomfort, but never confusion about where you stand. Discomfort in covenant sharpens you. Confusion in comfort drains you. One of the clearest markers of covenant is how conflict is handled. Comfort avoids tension to preserve peace. Covenant engages tension to preserve truth. In covenant, disagreements do not threaten the bond. They reveal the foundation. There is space for repair, not punishment. Dialogue, not withdrawal. Growth, not control. Anointed One, watch how someone responds when you express a need. Not how they respond when everything is easy, but when something requires effort. Covenant does not shame your needs or make you feel like a burden for having them. It listens, it adjusts, it stays present. Another marker is mutual direction. Covenant moves in the same spiritual direction, even if the pace differs. Comfort may walk beside you temporarily, but it does not carry the same vision. Over time, misalignment becomes friction. One person grows while the other resists. One seeks depth while the other avoids it. Covenant does not require sameness, but it does require shared values. I learned this through experience. There were relationships that felt peaceful, kind, and supportive on the surface. But over time, I noticed something subtle. My hunger for growth made the other person uncomfortable. My desire for purpose felt threatening. My obedience to God created distance. That was not covenant. That was compatibility without calling. Chosen One covenant does not compete with your assignment. It confirms it. There is also the question of spiritual safety. Covenant feels safe, not because there is no vulnerability, but because vulnerability is honored. You are not afraid to be misunderstood. You are not afraid to speak your truth. You are not afraid that honesty will cost you connection. That safety is not emotional chemistry, it is spiritual alignment. Comfort, on the other hand, often asks you to maintain harmony at the expense of authenticity. It subtly encourages silence where truth should speak. It rewards you for staying agreeable. Over time, that erodes intimacy. Anointed One intimacy is not closeness without truth. It is closeness because of truth. Another powerful marker of covenant is how the relationship impacts your prayer life. This is subtle but important. Comfort can distract you from God. Covenant draws you closer, not necessarily through shared rituals, but through inner alignment. You feel more grounded, more anchored, more clear. You are not constantly asking God to explain or fix the relationship. You trust Him within it. Scripture often speaks of God establishing paths, not just moments. Covenant is a path. It unfolds. It requires walking, and walking requires endurance. Chosen one, there is also a difference in how time is experienced. Comfort feels good now, but does not naturally extend into the future. Covenant invites vision. You can imagine building, growing, enduring. Not because everything is perfect, but because there is a shared willingness to work through imperfection. This does not mean covenant is always easy. It means it is purposeful. When challenges arise, they do not feel pointless. They feel formative. They shape the relationship rather than threaten it. I want to pause here and speak directly to your spirit. If you are currently in a connection and you feel constant anxiety about losing it, that is not covenant. Covenant does not need to be guarded through fear. It is guarded through faithfulness. If you feel the need to perform to keep someone's interest, that is not covenant. Covenant allows rest. If you feel you must suppress parts of yourself to maintain peace, that is not covenant. Covenant invites wholeness. Chosen one covenant is marked by mutual responsibility. Both people take ownership of the health of the connection. One does not carry all the emotional labor. One does not do all the adjusting. Balance does not mean equality in every moment, but it does mean shared commitment. There is also the test of seasons. Comfort often thrives in one season and fades in another. Covenant adapts. It survives transitions. Changes in circumstances, health, finances, or direction reveal the strength of what has been built. Covenant does not collapse when conditions shift. Anointed one covenant also respects process. It does not demand immediate access. It honors pacing. It allows trust to deepen naturally. It does not pressure you to bypass discernment in the name of closeness. This is where many people confuse emotional availability with emotional responsibility. Someone can be open and still unsafe. Covenant is not just about openness. It is about consistency. Chosen one. I want you to hear this without fear. If something in your life is meant to be covenant, it will withstand scrutiny. You do not need to rush your decision. You do not need to force certainty. Covenant reveals itself through time and truth. If something is only comfortable, it will resist examination. It will feel threatened by boundaries. It will avoid depth. It will ask you to choose peace over truth repeatedly. That is not failure. That is information. Heaven is not rushing you. God is not impatient. He is invested. And here is the most freeing truth of all. You are not behind if you are still discerning. Discernment is not delay. It is wisdom. Chosen one. The reason you haven't met them yet, or the reason things are unfolding slowly now, is because covenant is too sacred to be rushed and too powerful to be mistaken. God would rather protect you from settling than comfort you into stagnation. What is meant for you will not require you to abandon what God has built in you. It will honor it. It will grow alongside it. It will challenge you to rise, not ask you to stay small. In the next movement, I will speak about the final surrender that seals covenant, the internal release that allows God to bring together what He has been aligning separately, and why letting go of control is the last key that opens the door fully. Chosen one. There is a final surrender that comes just before heaven completes what it has been quietly aligning. It is not dramatic. It is not emotional. It is not a desperate release or a moment of exhaustion. It is a calm, internal letting go of control, the kind that happens when you finally trust God more than you trust your own strategies. This surrender does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop managing outcomes. For many chosen ones, control was once a form of survival. You learned to anticipate, to read energy, to adjust yourself in order to stay connected. You learned to prepare for disappointment before it arrived, and for a season that vigilance protected you. But anointed one, what once protected you will now prevent you from receiving what requires openness. Covenant cannot be controlled. It can only be stewarded. This is why the final preparation often feels like a stripping away of urgency. You no longer feel the need to secure the future. You no longer feel compelled to define the relationship too early. You no longer replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you said the right thing or did enough. That mental quiet is not detachment. It is trust settling into place. I remember the moment this shift happened for me. It wasn't during prayer or worship. It was in the middle of an ordinary day. I realized I was no longer rehearsing outcomes in my head. I wasn't bracing myself for disappointment. I wasn't planning my emotional escape routes. I was simply present. That was the moment I knew something had released inside me. Chosen one heaven waits for that release. Not because God withholds blessings until you perform surrender perfectly, but because control and covenant cannot coexist. Control keeps you guarded. Covenant requires vulnerability, and vulnerability cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely. This final surrender often looks like accepting uncertainty without anxiety. You don't need guarantees. You don't need timelines. You don't need constant reassurance. You trust that what is unfolding will reveal itself in truth, not illusion. And if it is not meant to last, you trust that God will show you without devastation. That level of trust is rare. Anointed one. This is why few people enter covenant fully, not because God is unwilling, but because surrender is costly to the ego. The ego wants certainty, it wants control, it wants to be ahead of the story. But destiny requires you to walk step by step, not leap ahead in fear or fantasy. There is a subtle difference between wisdom and control. Wisdom listens, control anticipates. Wisdom responds to what is present. Control tries to manage what has not happened. And in relationships, control often disguises itself as caution, discernment, or boundaries, but underneath it is fear of loss. Chosen one, healthy boundaries come from self-respect. Control comes from fear. Covenant can only grow in the presence of the former. This surrender also means releasing the need to be right about how your story unfolds. Many chosen ones carry a mental picture of how love should arrive, who it should be, how it should feel when it should happen. And while vision matters, rigidity blocks revelation. God often fulfills promises in ways that surprise us, not to confuse us, but to free us from limited expectations. I have seen people miss divine connections because they were too busy comparing reality to imagination. They overlooked alignment because it didn't match their internal script. Anointed One surrender invites you to recognize God's handwriting even when the format is unfamiliar. Another layer of this surrender is releasing identity attachment to waiting. For some, waiting became part of who they were. The longing, the solitude, the depth, the intimacy with God. And there can be an unspoken fear that entering relationship will disrupt that sacred connection. But Chosen One covenant does not replace your relationship with God. It reveals new dimensions of it. God does not ask you to choose between love and devotion. He integrates them. The final surrender is trusting that you will not lose yourself in what is coming. You will not disappear. You will not become smaller. You will not have to betray your calling to keep connection. That fear is often rooted in past experiences, not future reality. Anointed One. What God brings into your life will respect what He built in you. This surrender also involves releasing the need to be ready enough. There is no moment where you become perfect, healed, or complete. Readiness is not flawlessness. It is willingness. Willingness to communicate, willingness to repair, willingness to grow, willingness to stay present when old triggers surface. Covenant does not require you to be finished. It requires you to be honest. Chosen One. One of the clearest signs that this surrender has taken place is that you stop asking, "What if this doesn't work?" and start asking, "Can I show up fully today?" That shift from outcome-focused to presence-focused is where freedom lives. You are no longer negotiating with God. You are walking with Him. There is also a quiet confidence that emerges, not arrogance, not entitlement, but steadiness. You know what you bring. You know what you require. You know what you will no longer tolerate. And you are not afraid to walk away if alignment dissolves. Not because you are detached, but because you trust God to lead you forward. That trust is magnetic. Heaven responds to surrendered hearts, not by rushing outcomes, but by aligning paths effortlessly. Conversations happen naturally. Encounters feel unforced. Timing synchronizes without pressure. You stop chasing clarity because clarity meets you. Anointed One. Surrender is not giving up your desires, it is giving up your grip. And here is the paradox: the moment you release control is often the moment alignment accelerates. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped interfering. You allowed God to orchestrate what you could not manage alone. This does not mean you stop discerning. It means discernment becomes intuitive rather than anxious. You sense alignment without interrogating it. You notice red flags without spiraling. You enjoy connection without idolizing it. Chosen One. This is what spiritual maturity looks like in love. There is also grace in this surrender. Grace for timing that doesn't make sense. Grace for endings that protected you. Grace for unanswered prayers that redirected you. When you release resentment toward the past, you create space for trust in the future. You may feel moments of vulnerability as control loosens. That is natural. Control creates the illusion of safety. Surrender reveals real safety. And real safety is not the absence of risk, it is the presence of trust. Anointed One. The door does not open because you are ready to receive love. It opens because you are ready to steward it. And stewardship requires humility. The final surrender is saying, "God, I trust you with my heart more than I trust myself to protect it." That prayer is powerful, not because it invites risk, but because it invites guidance. You are not alone in this process. Heaven has been walking with you through every step, the confusion, the silence, the healing, the clarity. Nothing was wasted, nothing was random. Chosen One. What has been aligned separately is now ready to be brought together, not through striving, but through surrender. In the next movement, I will speak about how heaven confirms covenant through alignment beyond emotion, the external confirmations, the subtle synchronizations, and the quiet evidences that reveal when God has truly joined two paths together, not just two hearts. Chosen One. When heaven confirms covenant, it rarely does so through emotion alone. Feelings can be powerful, but they are not reliable witnesses. God confirms alignment through patterns, timing, and peace that remains consistent even when emotions fluctuate. These confirmations are subtle, layered, and unmistakable once you learn how to see them. This is where many people look in the wrong direction. They wait for intensity to prove legitimacy. They wait for certainty to arrive as a feeling. But covenant is confirmed through order, not adrenaline. Through alignment that repeats, not excitement that spikes. Anointed One. One of the first confirmations you will notice is synchrony without striving. Things begin to line up naturally. Conversations happen at the right moment. Encounters feel timed rather than forced. You are not chasing availability, you are meeting it. There is a sense that life itself is cooperating instead of resisting. I remember noticing this shift clearly. There was no dramatic moment, no declaration, no instant knowing. But there was flow. Schedules aligned without effort. Communication was clear without rehearsal. There was no sense of fighting the moment into existence. That ease was unfamiliar, and that's how I knew it was divine. Chosen One. Heaven confirms covenant by removing friction, not by increasing intensity. Another confirmation comes through stability across environments. Pay attention to how the connection feels in different settings, in private and in public, in stillness and in motion, during ease and during inconvenience. Covenant does not rely on atmosphere to feel secure. It remains grounded regardless of circumstance. Comfort connections often thrive only in ideal conditions. Covenant adapts. It doesn't disappear when things are ordinary. It doesn't falter when life becomes complex. It does not require constant reinforcement to exist. Anointed One. Another powerful confirmation is shared clarity without pressure. You don't feel rushed to define the relationship. You don't feel anxious about where things are going. Not because the future is unclear, but because the present feels anchored. There is mutual respect for process, mutual patience with unfolding. This kind of clarity does not come from constant discussion. It comes from alignment that speaks for itself. There is also confirmation through mirrored growth. Not sameness, but parallel movement. You may notice that both of you are independently growing in similar directions, spiritually, emotionally, practically, without forcing it. You are not dragging each other forward. You are walking side by side. Chosen One. This is significant. Covenant does not require one person to carry the vision alone. It is sustained by shared momentum. Another sign heaven is confirming covenant is the absence of spiritual resistance. You are not constantly questioning whether this is God's will. You are not battling inner unrest. Your prayers are not filled with confusion or bargaining. Instead, there is a quiet assurance, not certainty about every outcome, but trust in the path. Scripture often describes God's leading as peace that guards the heart. That peace is not emotional numbness. It is spiritual clarity that protects you from anxiety-driven decisions. Anointed One confirmation also appears through protection. This may sound surprising, but when covenant is forming, God often shields it from unnecessary exposure. Not everyone knows. Not everything is shared. Distractions are minimized. Interference is limited. This is not secrecy, it is divine covering. I have seen relationships falter because they were exposed too early to opinions, expectations, and pressures they were not yet equipped to handle. God is wise. He knows when something needs time to root before it can be revealed. Chosen. One another confirmation is how the connection interacts with your calling. Not whether the other person fully understands it, but whether they respect it. Covenant does not demand that you compromise your assignment. It creates space for it, encourages it, protects it. If you find yourself more focused, more disciplined, more aligned with your purpose, while the connection grows, that is not coincidence. Heaven does not bring distractions disguised as destiny. There is also confirmation through emotional safety over time. Not instant comfort, but increasing trust. You feel safe to speak without fear of punishment. Safe to express concern without being labeled difficult. Safe to be human without losing connection. That safety builds gradually, and its consistency matters. Anointed One, watch how repair happens. Covenant is not defined by the absence of conflict, but by the presence of repair. When misunderstandings arise, are they addressed with humility? Is there willingness to listen, reflect, and adjust? Or does the connection rely on avoidance to maintain peace? Repair reveals character. Covenant requires it. Another subtle confirmation is the absence of performance. You are not trying to be impressive. You are not managing perception. You are not filtering yourself to maintain interest. You show up as you are, and that is enough. There is no fear that authenticity will cost you connection. Chosen One, this is rare, and it is sacred. Heaven also confirms covenant through timing that protects, not pressures. The relationship unfolds at a pace that allows wisdom to stay engaged. You are not asked to leap before you can see. You are invited to walk forward with awareness. That pacing is intentional. If something demands urgency to exist, it is not covenant. Covenant respects process. Anointed One, you may also notice external confirmations, not in the form of signs you have to chase, but in subtle affirmations. Wise counsel feels supportive rather than concerned. Doors open rather than close. Life seems to accommodate rather than obstruct. These are not guarantees, they are indicators. God often confirms His will through consistency across multiple areas, not through isolated moments. There is also confirmation through rest, not complacency, but rest. You are not consumed by the relationship. You are not neglecting yourself. You are not losing balance. The connection integrates into your life without taking over your identity. Chosen One, love that is aligned does not require you to disappear into it. Another important confirmation is the absence of fear-based attachment. You are not staying because you are afraid of being alone. You are staying because you are choosing alignment. That choice feels free, not forced. Anointed One covenant does not trap you, it invites you. As heaven confirms alignment, you may notice your language changing. You stop speaking in absolutes driven by fear. You stop saying always and never. You stay present. You allow the relationship to unfold without scripting it. That openness is a sign of trust. Chosen One trust is the soil where covenant grows. There may also be moments where God asks you to wait even within alignment. This is not contradiction, it is refinement. Covenant does not mean immediate access to everything. It means growing capacity to hold what is being built. Do not confuse delay with denial. Sometimes God pauses progression to deepen foundation. Anointed One, confirmation is not one moment. It is a sequence, a pattern, a consistency that becomes undeniable over time. When you look back, you will see that the signs were not loud, they were faithful. You will realize that nothing had to be forced, nothing had to be manipulated, nothing had to be chased. It unfolded because it was aligned. Chosen One. This is how heaven confirms covenant, not by overwhelming you, but by steadying you. Not by intoxicating you, but by grounding you. Not by consuming your life, but by integrating into it. And when that realization settles, something profound happens. You stop asking, "Is this real?" and start living in gratitude for what is being revealed. You become a steward, not a spectator. In the next movement, I will speak about the responsibility that comes after confirmation, how to honor covenant without idolizing it, how to keep God at the center without spiritualizing control, and how to walk forward without losing the humility that brought you here. Chosen one. Once heaven has confirmed alignment, a new responsibility quietly emerges. It is not announced, it is not dramatic, but it is weighty. Because covenant is not sustained by revelation alone, it is sustained by stewardship. What God confirms, He expects to be honored. And honoring covenant requires maturity that goes beyond excitement, certainty, or even gratitude. This is where many people stumble without realizing it. After confirmation, there is a temptation to shift focus from God to the relationship itself. Not intentionally, not consciously, but subtly. The heart begins to orbit the connection instead of the source. Prayers become less frequent or more transactional. Discernment gives way to assumption. Gratitude turns into expectation, and slowly, without meaning to covenant, becomes an idol. Anointed One covenant was never meant to replace God in your life. It was meant to reflect Him. This is why humility matters more after confirmation than before it. Before alignment, humility looks like patience and trust. After alignment, humility looks like dependence on God, even when things are going well. Especially when things are going well. Because prosperity, emotional, relational, spiritual, can quietly erode vigilance. I want to speak honestly here. There was a time when I thought once alignment was clear, discernment could relax. I believed confirmation meant arrival. But what I learned is that confirmation marks the beginning of responsibility, not the end of vigilance. The enemy does not attack covenant from the outside first. He tests it from within through pride, complacency, and subtle shifts in posture. Chosen one. Honoring covenant means keeping God at the center, not just in theory, but in practice. It means continuing to seek wisdom even when things feel stable, continuing to pray even when things feel secure, continuing to listen even when answers seem obvious. God does not ask this because He is threatened by love. He asks it because love flourishes best under divine order. Another responsibility that emerges is resisting the urge to spiritualize control. This is subtle, and it often masquerades as discernment or protection. You may feel tempted to manage outcomes for God, to interpret every moment, to assign meaning prematurely, to over-spiritualize normal human process. But Anointed One covenant does not need constant interpretation to survive. It needs presence, honesty, and time. There is a difference between being spiritually aware and being spiritually anxious. Awareness listens. Anxiety monitors. Awareness trusts God's sovereignty. Anxiety tries to anticipate problems before they exist. Chosen one. Honoring covenant means allowing the relationship to be human as well as holy. Conversations will sometimes be awkward. Emotions will sometimes be messy. Misunderstandings will sometimes occur. These moments do not threaten alignment, they reveal where grace must operate. One of the most dangerous mistakes after confirmation is expecting perfection, either from yourself or from the other person. Perfectionism suffocates covenant. It creates fear of failure. It discourages vulnerability. It replaces growth with performance. Anointed One covenant thrives on truth, not flawlessness. There is also a responsibility to remain teachable, not defensive, not rigid, teachable. When God brings two people together, He does not freeze them in place. He continues to shape them individually and together. Growth does not stop because alignment has been confirmed. It accelerates. This is why humility is non-negotiable. Pride resists correction. Humility receives it without collapse. Chosen one. Honoring covenant also means honoring timing within covenant. Just because something is aligned does not mean every step must happen immediately. God is as intentional about sequence as He is about connection. Rushing milestones can destabilize what is meant to be built gradually. Patience does not disappear after confirmation, it changes form. Another key responsibility is protecting the covenant from unnecessary exposure. Not isolation, but discernment. Not secrecy, but wisdom. Not everyone needs access to what God is growing. Opinions can plant doubt. Comparison can distort perception. Pressure can rush maturity. I learned that not all encouragement is helpful, and not all curiosity is innocent. Some people project their unresolved desires onto your alignment. Some speak from fear disguised as concern. Protecting covenant means filtering voices without becoming hardened. Chosen one. This is stewardship, not selfishness. There is also the responsibility of self-awareness. Covenant does not absolve you from your patterns, it reveals them. Old habits may resurface under new conditions, not because the connection is wrong, but because healing is ongoing. When triggers appear, do not panic. Observe, communicate, choose differently. Avoid the trap of interpreting discomfort as danger. Growth is often uncomfortable. Discernment helps you distinguish between formative discomfort and destructive patterns. Anointed one. Honoring covenant means staying honest about what is emerging inside you. Do not silence your intuition to preserve peace. Peace built on silence is fragile. Peace built on truth is resilient. Another responsibility that often surprises people is maintaining individuality. Covenant does not require merging identities. It requires two whole people choosing interdependence, not dependence. Losing yourself to preserve connection weakens it. Honoring your own rhythms, callings, and boundaries strengthens the union. Chosen one. What God joins does not require erasure. It requires integration. There is also a responsibility to remain grateful without becoming entitled. Gratitude acknowledges gift. Entitlement demands maintenance. Covenant is not something you deserve by virtue of waiting long enough. It is something you steward because it was entrusted to you. This posture keeps the heart soft. Anointed one. One of the clearest signs covenant is being honored is continued peace under pressure. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of alignment, even when things are tested. Challenges do not dissolve connection, they deepen it, because both people are committed to growth, not escape. Another responsibility is resisting comparison. Comparing your relationship to others, their pace, their expression, their milestones, introduces unnecessary pressure. God writes uniquely. Covenant does not need to look impressive to be effective. Chosen one alignment is not a performance, it is a partnership. There is also the responsibility of forgiveness, not overlooking harm, but choosing repair, choosing grace, choosing to address issues without storing resentment. Covenant requires forgiveness, not because wrongs are inevitable, but because humanity is involved. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is maturity. Anointed one, honoring covenant means remembering why God aligned you in the first place, not to complete you, but to accompany you, not to replace Him, but to reflect His love. When that purpose stays clear, the relationship remains anchored. There will be moments when excitement fades and routine settles in. Do not interpret that as loss. Stability is not stagnation. It is foundation. And foundations are not glamorous, they are essential. Chosen one covenant does not need constant proof. It needs consistent presence. As you walk forward, keep this posture open-handed, humble, attentive. Do not clutch. Do not control. Do not withdraw. Stay present. Stay prayerful. Stay honest. God does not expect you to do this perfectly. He expects you to do it faithfully. In the next movement, I will speak about the completion of the cycle, how heaven closes the waiting season fully, how identity stabilizes in union without being absorbed by it, and how to walk forward in gratitude, confidence and peace without looking backward at what once was. Chosen one. This is where the cycle completes, not with noise, not with proof, but with peace that no longer needs explanation. The waiting season does not end when someone arrives. It ends when your identity is no longer shaped by absence. It ends when you stop measuring your worth by timing. It ends when you no longer look backward to understand yourself. This is the quiet miracle most people miss. Completion is not an event. It is an internal settling. A deep knowing that you are no longer becoming, you are being. You are not striving toward wholeness, you are living from it. And whether you are walking alone or walking alongside someone, that wholeness remains intact. Chosen one. Heaven does not close seasons abruptly, it seals them gently. You may notice that thoughts of the past no longer carry emotional weight. Old memories surface without pulling you into regret. Former relationships no longer feel like questions you need answered. They feel like chapters that served their purpose. That does not mean they were meaningless. It means their meaning has been integrated. There was a time when you replayed moments wondering what you did wrong, what you missed, who you could have been. But now clarity has replaced rumination. You see that nothing was wasted. Every delay shaped discernment. Every ending refined boundaries. Every season of solitude strengthened your voice. Anointed one. This is how heaven redeems time, not by erasing pain, but by transforming it into wisdom. At this stage, identity stabilizes. You no longer define yourself by who you are waiting for, who you lost, or who you hope to become in someone else's presence. You know who you are when no one is watching. You trust your instincts. You respect your limits. You honor your needs without apology. This stability does not make you rigid. It makes you rooted. Rooted people are flexible without losing form. They bend without breaking. They adapt without abandoning truth. This is why covenant, whether already present or approaching, no longer threatens your sense of self. You are not afraid of closeness because you are not afraid of yourself. Chosen one. This is the fruit of the hidden season. Completion also brings gratitude without nostalgia. You are thankful for what was without wishing to return. You appreciate lessons without longing to relive them. You can bless what ended without reopening doors. That is emotional maturity, and emotional maturity is one of the greatest gifts God gives before sustained peace. There is also a release of urgency. You no longer feel the need to prove that the season is over. You do not need to announce healing. You do not need validation for growth. Your life speaks quietly for itself. That silence is not emptiness, it is authority. Anointed one authority does not argue, it stands. As the waiting season closes fully, something else happens. Trust becomes embodied. Not intellectual trust, not spiritual language, embodied trust. You trust your body's signals, you trust your discernment. You trust God's timing because you have seen it work in hindsight again and again. You no longer fear future delays because you understand what delays actually do. They align, they protect, they prepare. This does not mean life becomes predictable. It becomes navigable. Chosen one completion does not make you immune to pain. It makes you resilient to it. You no longer collapse under uncertainty. You no longer interpret silence as abandonment. You no longer personalize seasons that were never about punishment. You walk forward without carrying old narratives on your back. There is also a new kind of confidence that emerges, not bravado, not entitlement, but steadiness. You do not chase connection. You do not cling to outcomes. You do not abandon yourself to be chosen. You choose from alignment, not fear. This confidence is quiet, but it is unmistakable. Anointed one. When heaven completes a cycle, it often simplifies your life. Relationships clarify, desires refine, distractions lose appeal. You find yourself less interested in what looks good and more interested in what feels true. That simplicity is not loss. It is focus, and focus creates peace. If covenant is present, you will notice that it no longer feels like an answer to a question. It feels like a continuation of alignment. It integrates into your life without eclipsing it. You do not lose momentum, you gain stability. You do not disappear, you expand. If covenant is approaching, you will notice that anticipation feels calm, not consuming. You are open, not searching, available, not anxious, content, not complacent. That posture signals completion more than any external sign ever could. Chosen one. Heaven does not rush to bring what you can now carry with ease. There is also a sacred grief that sometimes accompanies completion, not sorrow, but reverence. You may feel a tenderness toward the version of yourself who waited, hoped, endured. You honor them, you thank them, and then you let them rest. You do not need to carry them forward anymore. This is where gratitude deepens. Not gratitude for outcomes alone, but gratitude for process. Gratitude for how God guided you when you didn't understand. Gratitude for protection you once resented. Gratitude for growth you didn't choose but needed. Anointed one. Gratitude seals cycles. Completion also brings humility. Not the humility of unworthiness, but the humility of trust. You no longer assume you know how the next chapter must unfold. You remain open, curious, receptive. You walk with God instead of ahead of Him. That humility keeps your heart soft, even as your boundaries stay firm. Chosen one. This is what it means to walk forward without looking back. Not forgetting where you came from, but no longer living there. Not denying pain, but no longer identifying with it. Not fearing loss, but no longer leading with fear. Your story has shifted from preparation to participation. And here is the final truth that completes everything. The reason you hadn't met them yet was never because you were missing something. It was because something was being formed, not outside you, within you. And now that formation has reached stability, heaven is free to move without restriction. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not catching up. You are aligned. Whether love walks beside you now or meets you ahead, you walk forward as yourself, whole, grounded, and awake. You do not need to rush. You do not need to perform. You do not need to fear missing what God has already accounted for. Chosen one, the scroll has been opened. The season has turned. The waiting has done its work. Walk forward in peace. Chosen one, you have not listened to this message by chance. What was sealed is now opening. What was hidden is being revealed. The scroll written over your life is unfolding in this exact Kairos moment, heaven's appointed time marked on God's clock, not delayed, not early, but precise. Anointed one, I declare peace over your heart, clarity over your discernment, and courage over your next steps. Stay faithful, stay aligned. Walk forward with gratitude, knowing what is forming will manifest with grace, not struggle. If this word resonated with your spirit, rest in it. And when you're ready, you may share where you're watching from or quietly subscribe to stay connected as this journey continues. Heaven is still speaking.